Welcome, dear souls. I am the root tender at Iron Horse Homestead, caretaker of coop and candle, spinner of strange tales, and reader in residence to a rather discerning flock. Tonight, I bid you join us, yes us, for a tale plucked straight from the shadowed corners of the past. Gather close, settle your feathers, steep your tea. This is Wake Not the Dead, a cautionary love story steeped in yearning, grave dirt, and very poor choices. Wilt thou forever sleep? Wilt thou nevermore awake, my beloved, but henceforth repose forever from thy short pilgrimage on earth? Oh, yet once again return, and bring back with thee the vivifying dawn of hope to one whose existence hath, since thy departure, been obscured by the dunnest shades. What? Dumb? Forever dumb? Thy friend lamenteth, and thou heedest him not? He sheds bitter, scalding tears, and thou reposest unregarding his affliction? He is in despair, and thou no longer openest thine arms to him as an asylum from his grief? Say then, doth the paly shroud become thee better than the bridal veil? Is the chamber of the grave a warmer bed than the couch of love? Is the specter death more welcome to thy arms than thy enamored consort? Oh, return, my beloved, return once again to this anxious, disconsolate bosom. Such were the lamentations which Walter poured forth for his Brunhilde, the partner of his youthful, passionate love. Thus did he bewail over her grave at the midnight hour, what time the spirit that presides in the troublous atmosphere sends his legions of monsters through midair, so that their shadows, as they flit beneath the moon and across the earth, dart as wild, agitating thoughts that chase each other o'er the sinner's bosom. Thus did he lament under the tall linden trees by her grave, while his head reclined on the cold stone. Walter was a powerful lord in Burgundy, who, in his earliest youth, had been smitten with the charms of the fair Brunhilde, a beauty far surpassing in loveliness all her rivals. For her tresses, dark as the raven face of night, streaming over her shoulders, set off to the utmost advantage the beaming luster of her slender form, and the rich dye of a cheek whose tint was deep and brilliant as that of the western heaven. Her eyes did not resemble those burning orbs whose pale glow gems the vault of night, and whose immeasurable distance fills the soul with deep thoughts of eternity, but rather as the sober beams which cheer this netherworld, and which, while they enlighten, kindle the sons of earth to joy and love. Brunhilde became the wife of Walter, and both being equally enamored and devoted, they abandoned themselves to the enjoyment of a passion that rendered them reckless of aught besides, while it lulled them in a fascinating dream. Their sole apprehension was lest aught should awaken them from a delirium which they prayed might continue forever. Yet how vain is the wish that would arrest the decrees of destiny. As well might it seek to divert the circling planets from their eternal course. Short was the duration of this frenzied passion, not that it gradually decayed and subsided into apathy, but death snatched away his blooming victim and left Walter to a widowed couch. Impetuous, however, as was his first burst of grief, he was not inconsolable, for ere long another bride became the partner of the youthful nobleman. Swanhilde also was beautiful, although nature had formed her charms on a very different model from those of Brunhilde. Her golden locks waved bright as the beams of morn. Only when excited by some emotion of her soul did a rosy hue tinge the lily paleness of her cheek. Her limbs were proportioned in the nicest symmetry, yet did they not possess that luxuriant fullness of animal life. Her eye beamed eloquently, but it was with the milder radiance of a star, tranquilizing to tenderness rather than exciting to warmth. Thus formed, it was not possible that she should steep him in his former delirium, although she rendered happy his waking hours, tranquil and serious, yet cheerful. Studying in all things her husband's pleasure, she restored order and comfort in his family, where her presence shed a general influence all around. Her mild benevolence tended to restrain the fiery, impetuous disposition of Walter, while at the same time her prudence recalled him in some degree from his vain, turbulent wishes and his aspirings after unattainable enjoyments to the duties and pleasures of actual life. Swanhilda bore her husband 2 children, a son and a daughter. The latter was mild and patient as her mother, well contented with her solitary sports, and even in these recreations displayed the serious turn of her character. The boy possessed his father's fiery, restless disposition, tempered, however, with the solidity of his mother. Attached by his offspring more tenderly towards their mother, Walter now lived for several years very happily. His thoughts would frequently indeed recur to Brunhilde, but without their former violence, merely as we dwell upon the memory of a friend of our earlier days, borne from us on the rapid current of time to a region where we know that he is happy. But clouds dissolve into air, flowers fade, the sands of the hourglass run imperceptibly away, and even so do human feelings dissolve, fade, and pass away, and with them too, human happiness. Walter's inconstant breast again sighed for the ecstatic dreams of those days which he had spent with his equally romantic, again did she present herself to his ardent fancy in all the glow of her bridal charms, and he began to draw a parallel between the past and the present. Nor did imagination, as it is wont, fail to array the former in her brightest hues, while it proportionably obscured the latter, so that he pictured to himself the one much more rich in enjoyment, and the other much less so than they really were. This change in her husband did not escape Swanhilda, whereupon, redoubling her attentions toward him and her cares towards their children, she expected, by this means, to reunite the knot that was slackened. Yet the more she endeavored to regain his affections, the colder did he grow. The more intolerable did her caresses seem, and the more continually did the image of Brunhilde haunt his thoughts. The children, whose endearments were now become indispensable to him, alone stood between the parents as genii, eager to effect a reconciliation. And, beloved by them both, formed a uniting link between them. Yet as evil can be plucked from the heart of a man, only ere its root has yet struck deep, its fangs being afterwards too firm to be eradicated, so was Walter's deceased fancy too far affected to have its disorder stopped, for, in a short time, it completely tyrannized over him. Frequently of a night, instead of retiring to his consort's chamber, he repaired to Brunhilde's grave, where he murmured forth his discontent, saying, "Wilt thou sleep forever?" One night, as he was reclining on the turf, indulging in his wonted sorrow, a sorcerer from the neighboring mountains entered into this field of death for the purpose of gathering, for his mystic spells, such herbs as grow only from the earth wherein the dead repose, and which, as if the last production of mortality, are gifted with a powerful and supernatural influence. The sorcerer perceived the mourner and approached the spot where he was lying. "Wherefore, fond wretch, dost thou grieve thus? For what now is a hideous mass of mortality, mere bones and nerves and veins? Nations have fallen unlamented, even worlds themselves, long ere this globe of ours was created, have moldered into nothing, nor hath anyone wept over them. Why then shouldest thou indulge this vain affliction for a child of the dust, a being as frail as thyself, and like thee the creature but of a moment?" Walter raised himself up. "Let yon words that shine in the firmament," he replied, "lament for each other as they perish. It is true that I, who am myself clay, lament for my fellow clay. Yet is this clay impregnated with a fire, with an essence that none of the elements of creation possess, with love, and this divine passion I felt for her who now sleepeth beneath this sod. Will thy complaints awaken her? Or could they do so, would she not soon upbraid thee for having disturbed that repose in which she is now hushed? Avaunt, cold-hearted being, thou knowest not what is love. Oh, that my tears could wash away the earthy covering that conceals her from these eyes. That my groan of anguish could rouse her from the slumber of death. No, she would not again seek her earthly couch. Insensate that thou art, and couldst thou endure to gaze without shuddering on one disgorged from the jaws of the grave? Art thou too thyself the same from whom she parted, or hath time passed o'er thy brow and left no traces there? Would not thy love rather be converted into hate? Say rather that the stars would leave yon firmament, that the sun would henceforth refuse to shed his beams through the heavens. Oh, that she stood once more before me, that once again she reposed on this bosom. How quickly should we then forget that death or time had ever stepped between us? Delusion, mere delusion of the brain from heated blood, like to that which arises from the fumes of wine. It is not my wish to tempt thee, to restore to thee thy dead, else wouldst thou soon feel that I have spoken truth. How? Restore her to me, exclaimed Walter, casting himself at the sorcerer's feet. Oh, if thou art indeed able to effect that, grant it to my earnest supplication. If one throb of human feeling vibrates in thy bosom, let thy tears prevail with thee. Restore to me my beloved, so shalt thou hereafter bless the deed and see that it was a good work. A good work, a blessed deed, returned the sorcerer with a smile of scorn. For me there exists nor good nor evil, since my will is always the same. Ye alone know evil, you who will that which ye would not. It is indeed in my power to restore her to thee, yet bethink thee well whether it will prove thy will. Consider too how deep the abyss between life and death. Across this my power can build a bridge, but it can never fill up the frightful chasm. Walter would have spoken, and have sought to prevail on this powerful being by fresh entreaties, but the latter prevented him, saying, Peace, bethink thee well, and return hither to me tomorrow at midnight. Yet once more do I warn thee, wake not the dead. Having uttered these words, the mysterious being disappeared. Intoxicated with fresh hope, Walter found no sleep on his couch, for fancy, prodigal of her richest stores, expanded before him the glittering web of futurity, and his eye, moistened with the dew of rapture, glanced from one vision of happiness to another. During the next day he wandered through the woods, lest wanted for his mystic spells, such herbs as grow only from the earth wherein the dead repose, and which, as if the last production of mortality, are gifted with a powerful and supernatural influence. The sorcerer perceived the mourner and approached the spot where he was lying. Wherefore, fond wretch, dost thou grieve thus? For what now is a hideous mass of mortality, mere bones and nerves and veins? Nations have fallen unlamented, even worlds themselves, long ere this globe of ours was created, have mouldered into nothing, nor hath anyone wept over them. Why then shouldest thou indulge this vain affliction for a child of the dust, a being as frail as thyself, and like thee the creature but of a moment? Walter raised himself up. Let yon words that shine in the firmament, he replied, lament for each other as they perish. It is true that I, who am myself clay, lament for my fellow clay. Yet is this clay impregnated with a fire. Wake not the dead. All in the despair of impatience, Walter would have prostrated himself at his feet and supplicated him to fulfill at once a desire now increased to agony. But the sorcerer had already disappeared. Pouring forth his lamentations more wildly and impetuously than ever, he lay upon the grave of his adored one, until the gray dawn streaked the east. During the day, which seemed to him longer than any he had ever experienced, he wandered to and fro, restless and impatient, seemingly without any object, and deeply buried in his own reflections. Inquiet as the murderer who meditates his first deed of blood. And the stars of evening found him once more at the appointed spot. At midnight, the sorcerer was there also. "Hast thou yet maturely deliberated?" inquired he, as on the preceding night. "On what should I deliberate?" returned Walter impatiently. "I need not to deliberate. What I demand of thee is that which thou hast promised me, that which will prove my bliss. Or dost thou but mock me? If so, hence from my sight, lest I be tempted to lay my hand on thee." "Once more do I warn thee," answered the old man with undisturbed composure. "Wake not the dead. Let her rest." "Aye, but not in the old cold grave. She shall rest rather on this bosom, which burns with eagerness to clasp her. Reflect thou mayest not quit her until death, even though aversion and horror should seize thy heart. There would then remain only one horrible means." "Dotard," cried Walter, interrupting him, "how may I hate that which I love with such intensity of passion? How should I abhor that for which my every drop of blood is boiling?" "Then be it even as thou wishest," answered the sorcerer. "Step back." The old man now drew a circle round the grave, all the while muttering words of enchantment. Immediately the storm began to howl among the tops of the trees. Owls flapped their wings and uttered their low voice of omen. Stars hid their mild, beaming aspect, that they might not behold so unholy and impious a spectacle. The stone then rolled from the grave with a hollow sound, leaving a free passage for the inhabitant of that dreadful tenement. The sorcerer scattered into the yawning earth roots and herbs of most magic power and of most penetrating odor, so that the worms crawling forth from the earth congregated together and raised themselves in a fiery column over the grave, while rushing wind burst from the earth, scattering the mold before it, until at length the coffin lay uncovered. The moonbeams fell on it, and the lid burst open with a tremendous sound. Upon this, the sorcerer poured upon it some blood from out of a human skull, exclaiming at the same time, "Drink, sleeper, of this warm stream, that thy heart might again beat within thy bosom." And after a short pause, shedding on her some other mystic liquid, he cried aloud with the voice of one inspired, "Yes, thy heart beats once more with the flood of life. Thine eye is again open to sight. Arise, therefore, from the tomb." And so we leave Walter at the edge of a darker yearning, the veil not yet lifted, but stirred. If you've a taste for dread and a fondness for feathers, be sure to reast with us again. Part 2 of Wake Not the Dead draws nearer with each falling feather. You can read along in our zine, Henny Dreadfuls, available in the Ko-fi coop. You'll also find an audio version there, should you need a tale to haunt your tea time. Don't forget to click subscribe and let the spirits and chickens know you're listening. Until next time, keep your candle lit, your coop locked tight, and remember, never wake the dead.